Hello and welcome to Justin and Donald Save America, episode 7. We've got a couple of topics that we want to get into in this episode, specifically the idea that the media is being harder on Joe Biden than Donald Trump. I'm not joking. That is a real claim that's being put out there right now. We're going to talk about that and some new developments out of the good old, what is it, the People's Republic of China? What do they call it?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, we got a couple of China-centric articles that we're going to talk about on this episode of Justin and Donald Save America. But before we jump into any of that, I have to put that call out there because big tech doesn't do us any favors when we have this type of show with these types of messages in it. So you can help us get this content in front of more people by doing some very cost-effective things. They're free. Just hit the like button, leave a comment, share this content, be a subscriber on this channel, all things that cost you absolutely nothing, but help us break through these big tech algorithms. Justin, the first article that I want to talk about, the first story, I guess, is I just heard about this yesterday when I was driving to work. It was a Dana Milbank article. Dana Milbank
It's Dana.
article.
It's Dana, like a female.
Okay, Dana.
It's not he's not a female though. It's a man.
Okay, great.
Just with a woman's name.
Sure, fantastic. I don't want to assume anyone's gender. This is in the Washington Post. It is an opinion piece. Says the media treats Biden as badly as or worse than Trump. Here's the proof. So, do we even have to go further than the headline?
No.
I mean, I rail against the idea that people only read headlines and all of that because it doesn't give the full context. But, like, come on. Come on. Does anyone read this and be like, I wonder if there's some eye-opening stuff in here? Like, it's just, on its face, it's just ridiculous.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And I have a theory as to why we're seeing this, and we may see more of this. We may see more of this mythology spread throughout the left-wing media. But before we get to that, let's hear him out.
Yeah,
let's see what he has to say, because Dana Milbank. For those of you who don't read the Washington Post, because you're not losers. The Washington Post is Dana Milbank at the Washington Post is a very popular columnist. He's been around for a very, very long time, very widely read in certain circles. And so this isn't just some guy who submitted an op-ed to the Washington Post and they thought, oh, hey, this is, going to help Joe Biden out, so let's publish it. This is a guy who has been writing columns for them for a long time and does have a very influential following and has his articles often republished by lots of other newspapers across the country. So he's not a nobody. I think it's important to point that out. But let's hear out what Dana has to say. What does Dana have to say about his argument here?
All right. So a sampling of headlines atop the influential Politico Playbook newsletter over the past month. So it starts off with a sampling of headlines, apparently. Let the Democratic freakout begin. Okay. Dems start to face the hard questions. All right. Does the White House owe Larry Summers an apology? The other big intra-Democratic fight. No biff bump for Biden.
What is that?
Ooh, I don't know. I was actually going to ask you that. White House braces for a bad CBO score. ... Biden dithers ... I wonder why they didn't use the entire headline for that one. Probably because it's not that damning.
Yep.
Biden tries to calm nerves about 2024. And the case for why Biden is screwed. So that's the sampling of headlines that's supposed to suggest that the media is being hard on Joe Biden, I guess. I don't know.
It's not off to a good start.
Even the extraordinary news that jobless claims had dropped the lowest level in 52 years came with a qualifier. But don't expect the numbers to immediately change Americans' negative perceptions of the economy. It isn't just Politico. My impression of other outlets' coverage of President Biden had been much the same, unrelentingly negative. Was it my imagination? No, it wasn't. So here's the meat of the article. That was just a bunch of, clearing his throat. Artificial intelligence can now measure the negativity with precision. At my request, Forge.ai, a data analytics unit of the information company Fiscal Note, combed through more than 200,000 articles, tens of millions of words from 65 news websites, newspapers, network, and cable news.
Billions of characters, by the way.
Political publications, news wires, and more, to do a sentiment analysis of coverage using algorithms that give weight to certain adjectives based on their placement in the story. It rated the coverage Biden received in the first 11 months of 2021 and the coverage President Donald Trump got in his first 11 months of 2020. The findings, painstakingly assembled by Fiscal Note, Vice President Bill Fritschling, confirmed my fear. My colleagues in the media are serving as accessories to the murder of democracy.
In fairness, so just so that everyone understands, we actually hadn't read this article.
I have not. No,
this is the first time we're reading it for the first time.
Yeah, we're reacting to this. This is genuine reactions. I did not read this. My colleagues in the media are serving as accessories to the murder of democracy because they dare write headlines like "Dems start to face the hard questions," and "Does the White House owe Larry Summers an apology?" When I read that headline, all I can imagine is a knife going into the back of democracy. This is absurd.
Democracy is in a concentration camp, Donald, and it's on the verge of absolute extinction, being wiped out. This is amazing. So what accessories to the murder of democracy? All right, yeah. And then what?
After a honeymoon of slightly positive coverage in the first 3 months of the year, Biden's press for the past 4 months has been as bad, and for a time worse than the coverage Trump received for the same 4 months in 2020. Okay, so let's see. We got a chart here. News coverage of each president. How the media described Biden and Trump over a 1-year period. So you got the blue line representing Biden over those months and Trump over those months. So as you can see, Trump's is very bad consistently, whereas as Biden's started off much higher, actually in positive territory for a period of time before plummeting in August.
What happened in
August? Yeah. Oh, jinx. That wasn't the Afghanistan pullout, was it?
Yeah, I think it might have been. One of the worst foreign policy catastrophes in the history of the United States of America. I'm pretty sure that was in August. It was either in August or July. It was pretty sure it was in August.
Yeah, it was August.
Yeah,
it was the very end of August.
And then notice, even according to this stupid thing, which is like, what does this even mean? This system that they've come up with, because negative coverage is not all equal, right?
Good point.
So like when he says they use adjectives to help determine, okay, but when you say something like, Dems face hard questions.
Yes.
Okay, that's a negative headline. Is that the same thing as accusing Donald Trump of, I don't know, like
being a traitor,
being a fascist, or being mentally unstable with his finger on the nuke button, or pushing us to the brink of war with North Korea, or
right? Are these
being
terms
an agent of Vladimir Putin, or like there's so many things that they said about Donald Trump that are like, to say that this is kind of the same because one's negative and the other is negative, it's kind of like saying, the media isn't doing a very good job versus saying the media is an accessory to the murder of democracy. See, those are both negative statements, Dana, but they're very different kinds of negative statements. I
would love to look at
stupid even in and of itself, I think. I mean, unless they have a way of measuring whether certain kinds of words should be even weighted higher or something. But I don't know how they could do that with an algorithm like that. But
Yeah,
maybe.
I'm very curious to see like the methodology of this,
Me
because you're
too.
right. Like, how do they weight these things? Is it just binary? It's either good or bad, or
Yeah.
is it, given certain weight to, Donald Trump is a white supremacist
Right.
versus Joe Biden's not doing a great job. Are those weighted equally, or is one way higher than the other? I'm not
Right.
entirely sure.
Exactly.
We do have a clip of this gentleman talking. If we want to tune into an audio version of this article instead of just me reading it, what do you think?
Yeah. Let's see what he has to say. What was it? Where was this on? CNN or something? What was
Yes,
he?
this is CNN.
So
Uh,
while you pull that up, my theory about this, and the reason why I think it actually does matter to some extent, is that obviously it's always enjoyable to ridicule these totally absurd media hacks and the things that they have to say about press bias and everything. It's just totally ridiculous. But I do think that it is important for us to pay attention to this, because I think this is a strategy to help explain away why people don't like Biden.
mhm.
So they have to come up with some explanation for why all the
Almost
polling data is showing that that Joe Biden is not popular with voters, and that
Right.
he has had a massive plummet in terms of his popularity, even with middle of the road people and lean Democrats. So how can they explain for that? How can they account for that? They can't say it's because he's a massive failure, which is the other problem with this whole thing, is it assumes that Donald Trump was a failure and received negative coverage, deservingly so. This is what Dana
Deservingly
Milbank
so.
thinks.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden is not a failure and is receiving negative coverage, and so this is the murder of democracy, right? This is how he thinks. When in reality, Donald Trump was receiving negative coverage even when the economy was roaring, and even when things were generally pretty good and ISIS was being defeated and we were having massive economic success and the lowest unemployment rate in history for African Americans, and historically low unemployment for women, and on and on and on, he was getting massive negative coverage,
Yeah.
while Joe Biden has been a horrific failure and is receiving slightly better coverage than Donald Trump got throughout most of this period, right?
Right.
Even in under, like, with Afghanistan and stuff, they were kind of on par, other than for 1 month when it really collapsed.
Well,
So that's totally, like, that's not a fair comparison at all.
Well, Dana ends his article basically saying that journalists are being too objective, and and they're So it says here, too many journalists are caught in the mindless neutrality between democracy and its saboteurs, between fact and fiction. It's time to take a stand. So he
Right.
thinks that the journalists are actually, because they're trying to put in this the idea that they're being objective and weighing everyone equally and all of that they're actually abetting the murder of democracy.
Right.
When he's saying basically with this sentence at the end of his article that journalists need to be more activist. More activists than they
More.
currently are.
Yeah,
And I
because
think that
that's the point. Because Biden is not. Why don't people love Biden? Because the media is not. They can't. Again, he can't admit that it's because Biden sucks. It has to be some reason other than Biden sucks. And so, what's the best way to what's the best thing you can say? Well, it's the media. The media is not being positive enough towards him. He doesn't at any point evaluate whether the media should be positive because Joe Biden is doing a good job or not. Notice he doesn't defend Joe Biden's record throughout most of that article. I don't know if he does at some point later, but he doesn't appear to defend any of his record. He just says the media should be better to him. Well, it's like, why should he be better to him? What if Joe Biden's a disaster? Should the media be better to him then? And the media is not even being as bad to Donald. I don't even buy the premise at the beginning, but even if I did buy the premise, they should be railing against him. He's a disaster. So anyway, let's hear what he has to say on CNN.
let's hear it. And feel free to jump in. I'll just hit pause.
President was marked by persistent contempt for the media. Once he even declared the news media the enemy of the people. Not once, but many, many times. Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank writes in his latest column that it's President Biden, not Trump, who may actually have a legitimate gripe with the media. Milbank tasked an artificial intelligence.
Okay, so for just on that and the way that she said that, and you mentioned this in our like very brief conversation before we hit record, that like if this was blatantly obvious, this wouldn't even be something that needs to be posted in the opinion section of Washington Post.
Correct.
Like if he had some big opinion piece that was like Fox News treats Biden badly, it wouldn't even be published and they wouldn't be talking about it. It's because this is so clearly like counterintuitive that it actually deserves a big Monday morning spot on CNN. So like if that's the case, if you have to use artificial intelligence to make your case that actually mathematically Biden's actually taking a bigger licking in the media than Donald Trump, it's like it doesn't even matter at that point because it's all perception. Yeah. And the perception clearly is counter to what he is making the case for. And that's evidenced by the fact that this clip exists. But sorry, go ahead.
This company with analyzing hundreds of thousands of news articles from dozens of media outlets. And the results here, quote, the media treats Biden as badly as or worse than Trump. Joining us now is Dana Milbank. He is a columnist of the Washington Post, as I mentioned. Okay, first, let's talk about the media outlets. I just want to be clear. Some of these are not all straight news outlets, right? So you're looking at Breitbart, you're looking at Huffington Post, also ABC News, CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. What did you find?
Right. Fiscal note, the folks who did this for me, they cast a very wide net. So you'd get the extremes and also all of us in the middle to the greatest extent possible.
All of us in the middle. He literally just said that anyone saying anything remotely decent about Donald Trump is murdering democracy. He's in the middle, folks.
No. He didn't even say that. He said anyone who doesn't treat Joe Biden better is aiding and is abetting in the murder, accessory in the murder of democracy. Not even about Donald Trump.
A very moderate view, Justin. A very moderate view.
It's kind of what you would expect. It started out for Biden, fairly favorable coverage the first few months of the year. The last 4 months, however, Biden has been at where Donald Trump was or lower than where Donald Trump is in terms of media sentiment. I mean, it's not bias, it's the actual words we're using. So we are as negative as a collective media on Joe Biden, if not more so than we were to Donald Trump at a time when he was trying to overthrow democracy. And
I know. It's hard. It's hard.
Listen to the words that you're saying.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to listen to. How do people watch CNN? Can we just say that? How does anybody watch this network for even 2 seconds?
What he just said there confirms what you were wondering about how do you weight these things against each other? Nobody has ever said anything that is equal to the idea that Donald Trump is trying to overthrow democracy in the United States about Joe Biden. Nobody's ever said that.
Nobody on the left, no mainstream media outlet, no Washington Post, no Associated Press, no Reuters, none of them have ever, no CNN, none of them have ever once said anything even half, even a quarter, even 1/10 of his extreme as what CNN just said about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump isn't even in office. And they're still talking about him as being a threat to democracy and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So, exactly. This is exactly the point. Like, they have been more unfair to Donald Trump in 20 seconds than anyone has been in 10 months or whatever to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, so I listen to my fair share of like talk radio and whatever, right? And there'll be like people that are very well established people on our side of the political aisle, right, on the right, and they'll be like, "Why is nobody talking about this story?" And it's like, you're one of the biggest names in radio. You're talking about it. That, like, by definition means someone's talking about it. So it's like when he's sitting here on CNN saying that the media is not treating Biden fairly and all of that, it's like, you're the media right now.
I think that's a tremendous indictment of our whole industry.
Can I challenge you on the word "we," though? Because these are such disparate media outlets, right? You're lumping the Washington Post, your employer, in with, say, Breitbart or this agency that is doing this research is. Can you tell us the effect of that? Because I would look at like a Breitbart and
he looks like that droopy dog from like those cartoons.
Say they did so much positive coverage of Trump, so much negative coverage of Biden, and that kind of brings it the difference there.
And it would.
Well, that is true.
What's actually interesting is you would think that under Biden there'd be a corresponding effect, that sort of the left-wing media would be very favorable to Biden, but it doesn't actually happen. The left-wing media is tough on him. He's too progressive. He's not progressive enough. So the effect is
those are two. What is
no real support from the equivalents of the Breitbart on the left.
Yeah, you're right. Donald Trump never dealt with anything like that. There was no giant wing of never Trumpers that owned most of the media and all of that stuff.
I mean, literally, we have show me the equivalent of National Review doing an entire issue dedicated to opposing Donald Trump.
Right.
Show me the equivalent on the left. Show me the Atlantic or the New York Times or someone doing an entire issue about why Joe Biden is terrible. Yeah. Show me an equivalent. There is no equivalent. There is no equivalent. So this is outrageous. Like, this is just so outrageous that this guy would even try this.
And this kind of goes back to what I was saying. It's just like this concept doesn't even pass the smell test. Like the years-long investigation into Donald Trump and Russia collusion, based on some very shady report that was, turned out to be just completely fabricated and all of that. That investigation lasted for years.
Yeah.
The counter to that, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, with the laptop, it was like, no, we can't touch that. Let's not even look at it.
They wouldn't even let people share that story on social media.
Right.
They wouldn't even let people share that story on social media about Hunter Biden and his laptop and what was on the.
It's night and day different.
It's not even remotely comparable. It's not even remotely comparable. And the reason why it matters is because this is, I think they're testing out this strategy. Will this strategy work?
Yeah.
Because they don't have anything else. They can't say Joe Biden's been successful, which is what they do with most Democrats, because he's been so bad that you can't even fake it. It's so bad, you can't fake it. So they got to come up with some reason. They can't blame it all on conservatives because they know that they're the ones that control the media, and they know, and everyone knows that. So they can't do that. So what can they do? They can say, you know what? And this is one of those like half criticisms, half compliments, right? It's like you know what our problem is, guys? We're too tough on the politicians. That's the problem. Yeah. We're too hard. We're too much. We got to soften up a little bit because we're so tough on them. We're unfair. Yeah. We got to be more fair about things. It's like, no, you guys aren't tough.
Yeah.
You guys are the weakest group of people in the history of the media. It's never been worse than it is today and during the Obama administration. Those are the two worst periods in American history as far as journalism is concerned with the mainstream media. So, like,
another thing that I think is, because he talks about, we casted a very wide net. We wanted blogs included as well as established media sources like the Washington Post or whatever he said, right? But I've constantly have to have this conversation with people where it's like the media is not confined to just CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and all of that, and Fox News. The media also includes TV and movies and those late night comedy shows. And like, I guarantee you most of the people that are into news at all that are younger than Justin or I are watching The Daily Show. So did that include all of that stuff too? Because surely all of that is far more impactful to, especially younger crowds than anything that CNN is saying or MSNBC. So did you include all of that into your study too? I really doubt it. I very much doubt it.
No, absolutely not. And again, how does AI capture the absurdity of different kinds of stories?
Right.
It's impossible. We're going to stick a dagger in the heart of this totally absurd story. It's already completely ridiculous, but it's time to destroy it right now. Okay. This is my all-time favorite Trump story. This is a real news story. A real news story published about Donald Trump during the Trump era. by CNN. Trump gets 2 scoops of ice cream. Everyone else gets 1, and other top lines from his Time interview. Now, what is this about? This is about Donald Trump. The opening line, President Donald Trump is living every child's dream. More ice cream. And then it goes on to say that Trump's routine, blah, 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 blah. And it says, for example, Trump takes 2 scoops of ice cream with his chocolate cream pie, Time reported, while everyone else around the table gets just 1. And then it goes on to talk about his oddities and, uses things like business at any cost and how harsh he is. And look at that scowling face of his and everything, right? But I mean, just Google Trump 2 scoops of ice cream and just look at the stories. Independent. Donald Trump gets 2 scoops of ice cream while everyone else. Donald Trump, 2 scoops of ice cream.
I got a better one for you. And this one's got kind of a comparison to Joe Biden, if I can be crude on this show, which I won't hesitate to be. But, oh, wait. Shoot, I got to pull up another one. But remember the story about Donald Trump drinking water and using 2 hands? You remember that?
I do.
So I just Googled Donald Trump drinks water, and there are just Trump struggles to lift glass of water during 60 Minutes interview. That's the New York Daily News. There's a whole bunch just talking about him drinking water and how much of a struggle it is. I remember them talking about, and maybe this isn't the mainstream media talking about this, but invoking the 25th Amendment to get rid of Donald Trump because clearly he wasn't fit to be president, mental state, capacity, whatever, to be president because of the way he drank water or even walked down a ramp off a stage or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And how much media coverage does CNN ever give to Joe Biden when he struggles to talk during a speech, or when he stories out of the Vatican that he might have had an accident in his pants? There wasn't any talk about that ever.
No,
it's just,
again,
it's so painfully obvious that it requires some type of made up algorithm checking something to confirm something that everybody that is not completely delusional would deny.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, it's because they have no other choice.
Yeah,
this
I
is
think
it.
You're right.
They've run out of options.
This is a midterm strategy. And you're going to hear the more extreme of your leftist friends and family saying, "Oh, no, Donald, no. The media is actually much harder on Joe Biden than it ever was."
That's the reason why. When people say, "Well, why Joe Biden's wildly unpopular?" When they say his approval rating is, low 40s or high 30s or something like that, they're going to point to that and say, "Well, that's because the media is so tough on him." Tough on him. I had a woman email me maybe a week ago or something over some article that I wrote. I get a lot of hate mail, and unfortunately, and I got an email from this one woman, and she said at the beginning of the email, "You are lucky that the media is a right-wing media."
Oh my gosh!
And
was
I thought
this from
to
a
myself,
communist or like someone
I'm
more?
Like, well, but that's the point, right? I guess if you're a socialist, then I guess everything is to the right, basically.
I have heard that, yes.
Right. So I guess that is kind of true in a way, but that's the whole point, right? It's like the only people who think this way are like extremists. Like, you have to be an extremist to think that the media is not treating Joe Biden fairly. And the thing that is not so frustrating fairly, about Dana Milbank is
they not only treating him fairly. It's not that they're treating him fairly. They're giving him an absolute pass on everything.
Right. Without a doubt. This is a guy who has said on the campaign trail while running for president that he likes it when little boys sit on his lap and play with his leg hair. That is not an exaggeration. That is a real thing that he said. This is a guy who has montages of inappropriate touching and nuzzling and kissing of children. Right. This is a guy who has a son who is obviously corrupt and is obviously using the Biden family name to make millions and millions of dollars, which, according to emails found on his own laptop, which he stupidly left at a store, repair shop, is some of that money is going to Joe Biden. And yet, where's the media talking about any of these things? This is a man who was accused of raping a woman, of sexually assaulting a woman.
Right.
Where's the media? Why aren't we talking about that every single day? I mean, God knows we talked about that with Brett Kavanaugh forever when Brett Kavanaugh was trying to be nominated to the Supreme Court. That's all we could talk about was how one person who had, with no evidence, claimed that she had been sexually assaulted by him like 20 or 30 years ago, again, with no evidence. And that's all the media could talk about. But Joe Biden was accused of raping somebody while he was in Congress.
Sure.
And nobody, by someone who worked for him in Congress. And where's the outrage there? And we could go on and on and on all day long. It'll be these kinds of things.
It'll be very interesting to see, because I do think that I think you're convincing. I think that this is some type of strategy for like the midterms to explain away all of his failures and his low approval ratings and all of that. But it'll be very interesting to see him try to put this plan into action, because won't it just be reminiscent of Donald Trump? Like if Joe Biden's going to be like, oh, well, if the media treated me fairly, then I think my approval numbers would be higher or something like that. I'd be like, that's sounding an awful Trump, a lot like Trump there, Biden. So I don't know.
It's possible. This could be one of those times, though, where, because this happened with Barack Obama a lot, not this kind of thing necessarily, not the same kind of thing, but it happened with Barack Obama a lot where the media would create a narrative for Barack Obama, so Barack Obama wouldn't ever have to say something, because it wouldn't be very good if Barack Obama was saying it. So the narrative just emerged from the media itself, and he never actually has to say it. So maybe Joe Biden never has to say, oh, the media is not treating me fairly. Maybe if just the media all comes out and says, you know what, we're not treating Joe Biden very fairly, they're going to be, everyone will just somehow buy this. Like, oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Well, they're admitting it. I mean, Dana Milbank works for the Washington Post, and he says the media is not treating him fairly. So obviously, it'll
be interesting, because sometimes when they try to go too far, it blows up in their face. And I hope that this is one of those cases. If anyone approaches you, anyone listening to this, if anyone approaches you and says, no, like, and just tries to feed you this narrative, blow it out of the water. This is absurd. It should not even be given a shred of like validity at all. It's patently false and ridiculous. So don't let this get any traction. This is absurd. And let's just hope that it blows up in their face. All right, Justin, I got a couple of more things I want to talk about here. So let's jump to story number 2. So this is kind of an update. We've talked about this on the Stopping Socialism TV channel. I don't know if we've ever talked about it on this show before, but back when Joe Biden, I guess this is kind of a segue, very blunderously got out of Afghanistan, got the United States out of Afghanistan, there was a lot of talk about this power vacuum that was going to be created in Afghanistan. And there was a lot of talk, a lot of rumor, I guess, of the large mineral deposits that are in Afghanistan and how valuable they are, how they might have the largest lithium mines or, deposits, right? And it was like China was kind of sniffing around and thinking, maybe we can get in there and get some of this. So we had talked about it. We did a whole segment talking about on Stopping Socialism TV, talking about this. And about the potential of China going in and mining stuff like lithium out of Afghanistan. And we even covered an article, I think it was from the Council on Foreign Relations. It was a very elitist establishment organization that was saying, no. Yeah, sure, they might, but it's not going to happen. Don't pay attention to this, right? And over time, because we have such a short attention span in the media, the story just kind of evaporated. So just randomly, literally on a whim, I was just like, oh, I want to see what happened, in Afghanistan with China. So I literally Googled China and Afghanistan, and this article came up. So this is a Financial Times article. Chinese mining groups scour Afghanistan for opportunities. And when I looked this up, this is like a 2-day-old article now. When I looked it up, it said that it was posted 4 hours ago. So there was something going on. Something clicked in my brain to look at this at the opportune time. So Chinese mining groups are scouting opportunities in Afghanistan to access the country's lithium and copper deposits as Beijing steps into the void left by the U.S. and its allies just months after the Taliban seized power. A group of mining industry representatives has visited Afghanistan in recent weeks, according to a senior official in Kabul and a representative from the Chinese Industry Association. China's efforts to secure mining rights comes as Afghanistan faces an acute financial and humanitarian crisis following the exit of U.S. and coalition forces in August. There you go. That answered our question. And after Beijing and Taliban leaders held talks before American withdrawal. So it says China has managed to maintain a direct line of communication with the Taliban since August of 2021, and being among the first few countries to send aid definitely boosted its relations with the Taliban, which are eager for finances to stabilize the Afghan economy, said an analyst at the National University of Singapore's Institute of South Asian Studies. So, yep, it really does look like what we expected and what the Council on Foreign Relations said wouldn't happen is actually happening, and China is moving in and scouting out areas so that they can pull out that sweet, sweet lithium.
Yeah.
For further context, real quick, just for the people that aren't, in the weeds on all of this, lithium is going to be a massively important commodity if we do start transitioning more and more to this carbon neutral energy production with wind and solar, and then we're going to need a whole lot of batteries to store all of that, for the when the wind's not blowing and the sun's not shining. So lithium is going to be massively important.
Yep.
And China is cornering a humongous deposit of this as we run away.
Right.
So that's what's going on. And we predicted this.
There were so many weird things about the Afghanistan withdrawal that just don't make any sense. And we still don't really understand the logic of some of the decisions that were made. I mean, one of them was, and this is a big part of it, right? It's like, on the one hand, Joe Biden will get up there and talk about China being a danger to the world and, how if America isn't careful, democracy won't survive, and that the Chinese model is going to take over and all this stuff. And then on the other hand, and he talks about human rights abuses and stuff on occasion, not as much as he should, but he does mention it sometimes, people in the White House and him directly. But then on the other hand, they just give away like a massively important natural resource to China, while they're also plotting to to put policies into place that would make that natural resource even more valuable than it already is. Why? And they abandon, their gigantic airfield that they had there as well. They just decided to leave it in Afghanistan, knowing that the Chinese wanted it. It's strategically, it's incredibly important, one of the largest airfields in the world, and they just leave it there for China to take, and they walk out the door and they leave these gigantic. Why would they do any of that? It was just, there's certain aspects of it that are like, I understand why, if you really want to get out of Afghanistan, you may just say, I don't care what the consequences are in terms of, maybe it looks really ugly and maybe people die and maybe it's a disaster the way we do it, but we just have to do it now or else we may never do it. Now, I'm not saying that's the right decision, but I get it. I understand what they're trying to do.
Sure.
But the idea that you just ignore the strategic importance of this place, just ignore it outright and say, yeah, you know what? The Chinese and the Taliban, they'll handle it. They'll figure it out. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. It's like, why? This is your biggest strategic competitor in the world economically and maybe someday militarily, and you're just going to hand them this key, like borderline, not quite master resource, but like borderline master resource to people who are going to use that against you for the next century or more, maybe indefinitely? Like, why would you do that?
I have no idea. And I don't know. This is something that confounds me. And anyone that's listening to this, feel free to leave a comment and what your theory is on all of this, because it's like, part of my brain is like, well, this is just the elites of the United States and Western society, just like handing over the keys to the kingdom to China, right? And there's a couple of other examples of stuff that they've done that plays right into China's hands over the last, I don't know, several years, if not longer. And this, to me, is one of the biggest examples of it. It's one of the most blatant examples. It almost seems like it was predetermined. This wasn't just like China seizing on the opportunity because they saw the United States walking away. It seems like something that was in the plans for a while. But then on the other hand, it's like, even out of the Biden administration, there is tough talk against China. So I've got this article, and I'll let you kind of dissect some of this and come up with your theory. But this is an article this is the NBC News. China warns U.S. will pay for Olympics diplomatic boycott. So apparently the White House is threatening to boycott in part the Winter Olympics that are going to be taking place in China in 2022. Not that no athletes are going to go, but supposedly that we're not going to send any diplomats or any public figures or something like that. And it says the White House on Monday announced it would not send any government officials, there you go, to the games in February of 2022 due to, quote, ongoing genocide and crimes against humanity in Xinjiang and other human rights abuses. Obviously, they're talking about the Uyghur concentration camps that are all going on in Western China, where some human rights reports suggest that it could be millions of Muslim Uyghurs that are in these concentration camps. So that's what they're referring to. But it's like, so on one hand, is the government, is the Biden administration handing the keys to the kingdom to China? Or on the other hand, are they actually like, slapping the back of their wrist with a ruler? I don't really get it. It seems like there's a conflicting messages going on here.
Without a doubt. And this is one of the things that really struck me as being bizarre, because you're right. There is language like that from the White House. You'll see them talk about China in that way at times. Then at other times you'll see people like John Kerry when he was at Glasgow and he was asked about, trying to work with China. And he was asked about sort of the human rights abuses and stuff going on in China. And John Kerry was basically like, I don't really have anything to do with that. That's not really my, I'm the climate change guy. That's basically what John Kerry said. And, I'm focused on getting China to deal with us on climate change. Like, and other stuff, whatever, human rights abuses, whatever. I'm the climate change guy. Don't talk to me about that. And it's like, why do we see this weird vacillation between their human rights violators and we can't, be involved with them at all, to we need to work really closely with them to battle climate change, to this story, which I found, which is absolutely amazing. China, this is a story published July 29. This is before the collapse of Afghanistan, right? Okay. And what does it say here? China's interest in Afghanistan could be positive, says Blinken. Good. Now, what does it say? It says here, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has said China's possible involvement in Afghanistan could be a positive thing. He said this was if China was looking towards a, quote, peaceful resolution of the conflict, meaning the conflict between the Taliban and the valid government that was overthrown eventually by the Taliban, and a truly representative and inclusive government. And then it says his comments came after Taliban representatives visited China. China said it saw the Taliban playing an important role in the peace process and rebuilding in Afghanistan. Well, that didn't age very well, did it? It says here, no one has an interest in a military takeover of the country by the Taliban. No. No one has an interest in that. The restoration of an Islamic emirate. Except that's exactly what happened within a month of him saying this. And the Chinese, who had been courting the Taliban up to this point in time, were the very first ones, as the other article we read said, to hand over resources and congratulate them and tell them they're here to support them and that they'll be their best friends and they'll have slumber parties together and everything. Like, that was the very first country to do that, was China. Yeah. So what the heck is going on? Yeah, why would Anthony, it's almost like he's almost like he's encouraging it. Almost like, oh yeah, China, I'm glad China is getting involved in Afghanistan. I'm glad that China's working with the Taliban. Why would you ever be glad about that?
Well, and another thing that kind of comes to mind is like the idea that some of these like big corporations that one report that we had talked about a long time ago, where all these corporations are like using like essentially slave labor in China. But like, when it comes to public perception, all they have to do is put an LGBTQ flag in their little avatar for their social media, or put like a BLM thing over here every once in a while, just a virtue signal. So everyone, the perception is that they're actually a very progressive organization when they're doing terrible stuff. And I could almost see people thinking like, okay, well, maybe they're doing all this stuff to aid China because, corruption and all this stuff. And then they're just virtue signaling by putting out these toothless boycotts of, Winter Olympics stuff, And I could totally understand that. And I could wrap my head around that. But China takes stuff like that really seriously.
Yeah.
And they get super offended when you suggest that they're committing genocide and all of that. John Cena, when he was doing the promotion for the latest Fast and Furious movie, referred to Taiwan as a country in an interview. This is an actor.
It is.
Referred to Taiwan as a country. And China came down on him so hard that he had to issue the most embarrassing apology video of all time. There was a director. She's from Chinese descent. What's her name?
Yeah. Was it for the Mulan movie? Is that what you're thinking of?
Maybe. I can't think of her name. It was like Zhao something, right? And she won an Oscar for some movie that she did.
Oh,
and it was supposed to be like oh great, like we're gonna give China all of this praise, because a director from Chinese descent, won this Oscar, right? But she had an interview in a filmmaking magazine or something like that, Filmmakers Magazine, like 5 years ago. And in it, she said that her time in China as a child wasn't great because, it was like she was surrounded by lies or something. And that one comment in Filmmaker Magazine 5 years ago caused China to censor the Oscars awards in their country and didn't even show her getting it. So when they're so sensitive when it comes to just little criticisms like that, that they're taking it to heart when, the Biden White House is calling them genociders. So again, I don't know. I'm very curious for people in the comments to leave their theories as to the seemingly contradiction between these two things. But I'm open for theories, man.
Yeah, without a doubt. By the way, the director's name is Chloe Zhao, and she did she did Nomadland, which was
that's what she won the
Oscar
movie for, right? Yeah,
correct. Yep. And so it was a big deal because obviously it's a female director, Chinese, and that doesn't happen very often. You don't have a lot of Chinese female directors winning Oscars. So you would think they would be very happy about this, but they were not, because God forbid you step out of line even one time. If we can find a single instance of you not towing the Communist Party line, then you're dead to us, basically, is how they act. And so it is strange. It's so bizarre. On the one hand, you have John Kerry saying, whatever, I don't care. I'm the climate change guy. Let's not worry about human rights abuses. On the other hand, you've got Anthony Blinken saying, maybe it's a good thing China and the Taliban are buddying up like Turner and Hooch, right? Like, that's great. Fantastic. Right. Then you've got America saying, we're going to boycott the Olympics. And then it's just like, what is going on over there? Then they had that big blowout. Remember that? Like toward the very beginning of the Biden administration, it happened very early on, where they had some diplomatic meeting. We didn't prep for this, but
you were telling me about this before. Yeah,
they had some diplomatic meeting, and it got very, very ugly between people in the Biden administration and in China. And the diplomats were basically really ugly with each other over some of the stuff that was going on in China. And then China pushed back and was saying things like, who are you to lecture us about human rights and all this stuff when you have this horrible record of human rights and you've got people burning cities down in America over human rights issues and all this stuff. And it was real ugly. So
or Joe Biden during like that Davos thing. Again, you were telling me this, and maybe you can correct me if I got the details wrong, but he was basically suggesting that the components that we kind of group into the concepts of the Great Reset was something that we have to pursue if we're going to compete against China's Belt and Road Initiative. Right. So it's like, again, you're kind of setting us up as being adversarial with China. But with this story, it's like we're handing Afghanistan with all their lithium and rare earth materials over to China. So what is it?
And to add it all in, if we want to get really, conspiratorial about it,
which I do.
I know you do. That's why I'm doing this. To add, a twist to this whole thing, you have all these reports, all these stories that Hunter Biden, there is evidence, strong evidence. And some of it, by the way, I have some inside information will be coming out sometime in maybe January, February-ish, perhaps. Some of the stuff from the Hunter Biden laptop. But what the evidence on Hunter Biden's laptop suggests that Joe Biden, or at least the Biden family, is getting lots and lots of money from Chinese party connected business people. And that the reason for the money being given was because of Joe Biden's, when he was vice president. And now, of course, they knew he was potentially going to become president and all of this stuff. So that makes things even more complicated, because if the Chinese are funneling millions of dollars to the Biden family, or $1 million, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, how does that play into all of this? It's very, very complicated. But what we do know is this: something's happening. Something is very strange.
Something rotten in Denmark.
Weird. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Because this doesn't make any sense. All these stories should not fit together. And yet this is the reality we live in. These things are all really happening. Yet if you wrote this into like a movie plot, it would sound ludicrous. Like, why would all these different things be happening? It just sounds like totally disjointed. It is. What's going on.
This is a story that we're obviously very interested in. Like I said, I just Googled this on a whim one night, so we're definitely going to keep on top of this. And as we dissect it, hopefully the picture becomes clearer. But like I said, we are open to theories. So type them in the comments. Maybe we'll read some of them next time we do an update on this story. Justin, we were supposed to do a shorter episode and we're already north of 50 minutes. Is there any other words of wisdom, anything you want to get off your chest before we sign off for the day?
No. Well, you know what? I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Well, we're going to do a couple more episodes before Christmas.
Happy Hanukkah.
But Happy Hanukkah and, all the other holidays.
Happy holidays.
All the other ones. All right, fantastic. Well, thank you all for tuning into this episode of Justin and Donald Save America. Like I said, help us grow this channel by hitting that like button, leaving a comment, sharing this, subscribing, most importantly, all of things that you can do that are free that'll help our channel grow. If you want to see more socialism related content, you could always go to Stopping Socialism TV, also a channel here on YouTube. You can go to stoppingsocialism.com, or you can see content from stoppingsocialism.com on our various social medias, whether it's Stopping Socialism on Facebook. We have an Instagram account. We have a Twitter account. We have a Parler account. So you can find us if you look hard enough. Justin, where can all the fine people find you?
At Justin T. Haskins on Facebook and Socialist Twitter and Parler and Getter and Facebook. Did I say that? Yeah. And that's in heartland.org. You can always go there, and stoppingsocialism.com.
Yeah, see? Fantastic. A lot of places to find great content by us. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.